Oftentimes people get shocked when some historic truths are unexpectedly unveiled. Many people falsely think that the Pentecostal churches are a modern phenomenon. But this is not true. The Pentecostal churches are as old as the Christian faith. Pentecostalism is the foundation of Christian faith. And the Pentecostalism in India is more than 2,000 years old. Without knowing this historical truth, some time back some Pentecostal leaders who did not have much sense of history celebrated the 100 years of Pentecostalism in India. It was a mistake. In fact, Pentecostalism in India is 2,000 years old. Today I would like to argue that the Pentecostal churches are historically the oldest, doctrinally best, and socially most constructive. I do this in the context of the false perceptions, malicious propaganda and perverted cogitations of some misguided persons who are deadly bent upon destroying the Pentecostal movement. Most historians and church leaders fail to understand that historically the oldest and the most ancient Christian churches in the world were indisputably the Pentecostal churches. WHO can dispute the fact that the first-century church was Pentecostal. The Church of Jesus Christ had its origin in the book of Acts as a result of the events of the day of Pentecost as recorded in Acts chapter 2. The pattern of the New Testament church is also portrayed in the book of Acts. The rules and codes for managing the church are available in the epistles written by the apostles. If you impartially compare the content of the book of Acts and also the epistles written by the apostles, with that of the doctrinal functioning of the modern Pentecostal churches, you can easily understand a few things: that the original church was Pentecostal, that the manner and pattern followed by the biblical church is most aptly comparable to those of the modern Pentecostal churches than that of any other churches. All the apostles were inevitably Pentecostal. And the early church, at least for the first 3 centuries around the world, were clearly Pentecostal. It was only after the first 3 centuries that the Pentecostal model of the churches slowly began to degenerate to the kind of kingly episcopacy. It was through prolonged encounter with the world and power struggle that the Pentecostal model of church structure and functioning got degenerated to the episcopal model. It was only after the 3rd century that denominations such as Roman Catholic Church, Orthodox Church etc., began to emerge. Before that there was no idolatry, no Mary worship, no saint worship, no pope, no crown and no In India the original churches established Apostle Thomas in Kerala was also Pentecostal. Apostle Thomas himself was part of the first Pentecostal experience. Hence the churches he established were also Pentecostal. And all these churches remained Pentecostal for many centuries. A clear-cut episcopal system emerged in the Indian churches probably only with the advent of the Roman Catholic Church and the Portuguese. Think about that. 15 centuries had passed. Archbishop Menzies convened a synod in Kerala in the year 1599, called the Synod of Diamper for commandeering obedience to the Pope of Rome. The representatives sent from various congregations were forced to accept the decrees read out by the archbishop. Thus many Syrian Christian churches of Malabar were made part of the Roman Catholic Church under the Pope. My point is that even at that time there were no strong bishops or episcopal system in Indian churches. The church organization was somewhat like the modern Pentecostal churches. There was no prayer to the dead, there was no saint worship in the original Indian churches. It was Pentecostal. But when the Roman Catholics came here with their Roman episcopacy and the tradition of the prayer to the dead, saint worship, the Indian churches resisted and turned to the church in Antioch for survival. From then onwards we can see a lot of rush for ordination, recognition and episcopacy. There were many debates on the apostolic succession. But Apostle Paul in 2 Corinthians chapter 5 verse 16 stated, "Wherefore henceforth know we no man after the flesh, yea, though we have known Christ after the flesh, yet now henceforth know we him no more." Now this is a powerful statement against the physical visible order of apostolic succession. Apostle Paul himself got the apostolic authority directly from God Jesus Christ. But some ignorant persons argue that the Orthodox Church is the oldest church and that it was the Orthodox Church which baptized Mother Mary and wrote the Bible. These are all extremely baseless and biased views and arguments. Unfortunately, the Catholic and the Orthodox churches did not come into existence at that time. It was the Pentecostal Church which gave immersion baptism to Mother Mary. Again, it was the Spirit-filled Pentecostal churches which were instrumental in writing the Bible and determining the canon of the Bible. If the so-called traditional churches were responsible for the writing, I can be sure they would have tried to fill the Bible with all kinds of traditions. Anyway, they could not do that because of the providence of God. The original Pentecostal event was in Bible. My second argument is that, The Pentecostal churches are doctrinally the best in accordance with the Bible. The Pentecostal churches have the purest and the clearest doctrinal beliefs in accordance with the Bible, and give the highest priority to the fundamentals of the Christian faith from the biblical perspective. It has no baggage of unbiblical doctrines and man-made traditions such as idolatry, saint worship, praying to the dead, etc. All those who believe that Jesus Christ is the incarnation of the only true God, died for the sins of mankind and rose from the dead on the third day, and obey his teachings are generally considered as Christians. What makes the Pentecostals a distinct denomination is their belief that the 66 books of the Protestant Bible are inspired by the Holy Spirit and are hence infallible and true, and that the power of Holy Spirit of God is at work in believers even now, just as in the biblical times, through the working of many miracles, casting out of demons and healings. Pentecostals consider the Bible as the only basis of their doctrines and do not believe in non-biblical traditions. And nobody claims that all the Pentecostals are perfect followers of Jesus. In the YouTube videos one can watch any number of miracles and healings God is doing through the Pentecostal congregations. Many false prophets are accusing that the Pentecostals are not worshiping Trinity, that they are worshiping a Jesus isolated from the Trinity, that they have no Trinity songs. All these allegations are baseless, simply because the Bible does consider worshiping Jesus as an invalid worship. But the Pentecostals believe that worshiping Jesus is perfect worship of Trinity. Because it is the Father who draws people to Jesus and it is by the work of the Holy Spirit that we are able to glorify Jesus. Hence worshiping Jesus without denying the Trinity is the perfect worship in which there is the perfect involvement of the Trinity, and there is perfect focus to the object of worship which is perfectly legitimized in the Bible. We worship the one true God who became a historical human being. According to Esau chapter 9 verse 6, "Unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace." Hence worshiping Jesus. The true Christians must focus on fundamental doctrines of Christian faith. They must believe and follow the pattern of events on the day of Pentecost in Acts 2. They must reject all the unbiblical man-made traditions later added to the apostolic tradition. The original apostolic tradition is recorded in the New Testament. Pentecostals are the only Christian church which has a derivation from the events of the book Acts in the Bible. On that day of Pentecost, Holy Spirit came upon the believers. God has brought up the modern Pentecostal movement into being in order to help the church rediscover the doctrine of the baptism in the Holy Spirit and the accompanying gifts of the Spirit. My third argument is that Pentecostal churches are socially most constructive. They are the classical example of a melting pot, into which all the communities of people merged together. Pentecostalism was the biggest melting pot of all denominations and religions, in the history of the world. In the Pentecostal churches you can find all kinds of people. It is the only truly cosmopolitan community in the world. It is a global movement. In the Pentecostal churches everywhere in the world you will find that people from all the communities around come and merge into Pentecostal churches. Their only commonality is faith in God Jesus. Christian is a generic noun. There are thousands of denominations under the broad umbrella of Christian in which RC, Orthodox, Jacobites, Protestants like Baptists, Brethren, CSI, Pentecostals etc. There are also liberal rationalistic and even atheistic Christians who even don't believe in the Bible, Jesus etc. also get converted and come to the Pentecostal churches. In the Indian Pentecostal churches you can see the Muslims, Hindus, Roman Catholics, Orthodoxians, Jacobites, even priests and nuns, and people belonging to all kinds of castes and communities, including many Brahmins flocking together to worship God Jesus. There are people belonging to different economic strata, of different colors and castes. Unlike any other churches or religions, you can find here so many ex-criminals, ex-drunkards and ex-drug addicts who have listened to the gospel of Jesus and repented, believed in Jesus and transformed their lives. It is the power of the gospel of Jesus Christ which led them to the Pentecostal churches to come and worship there. Unlike any other movement in the modern world, it is the Pentecostal that thus the modern Pentecostal movement was a precious gift of God for the end-time global revival of the church. Pentecostalism captured back the lost coin of spirituality in the 20th century. It is today like the water-giving rock of the desert. Hence the devil definitely worked to spoil it from within and without. And the attack from within is more devastating than the one from without. Hence there is powerful satanic attack against it going on around the world. Thus gradually the Pentecostals are also subjected to the loss of saltness. Because of its unique position and ingenious performance, many have become so jealous that they are bent upon maligning and destroying it at any cost. By weakening the Pentecostal movement, they can weaken the preaching of the gospel. False witnesses from inside and unjustifiable criticism from outside are all part of it. We must keep the devil away and keep the movement awake. Hence go ahead and preach the gospel of Jesus Christ. Because, neither is there salvation in any other, for there is none other name on